What if I told you that a silent war is already being planned? One so calculated, so advanced, and so explosive that it could redraw borders, rewrite alliances, and unravel global peace in a matter of days. What you're about to hear isn't speculation, it's not theory. It's a leaked $10 billion, 0 cents military blueprint. A document that exposes not just Israel's war intentions, but a potential chain reaction that could shake the entire world. From the streets of Tehran to the boardrooms of Europe, from the whispers of artificial intelligence to the roar of missiles, this story has it all. This isn't just about the Middle East. It's about the future of warfare, the role of technology in our lives, and the moral choices that define who we are as a global community. So before you scroll away, ask yourself this: what happens when the truth is too dangerous to ignore, but too powerful to stay hidden? Stay with me to the end, because by the time we're done, you won't see the world the same way again. The recent exposure of Israel's $10 billion 0 cents military strategy has sent shockwaves through both regional and global power structures. At the center of this revelation lies a highly confidential blueprint that outlines the modernization and expansion of Israel's warfare capabilities. This document, allegedly leaked by an internal source, is not just a financial spreadsheet. It is a mirror into the mindset of a nation preparing for decisive and high-tech confrontation. It includes allocations for cyber warfare infrastructure, long-range missile systems, unmanned aerial vehicles, and precision-guided munitions. More chillingly, it reveals a structured plan for preemptive operations that would target strategic sites across the Middle East, suggesting readiness to engage in conflict far beyond its borders. The document's authenticity, while not officially confirmed by Israeli authorities, has been validated by multiple independent analysts and intelligence consultants who note the language, systems described, and operational timelines match previously known developments. Cyber operations are of particular concern. This war framework includes the creation of digital units meant to disrupt enemy infrastructure, such as power grids, water systems, and communication lines, without ever firing a bullet. Such tactics indicate a shift toward non-traditional forms of warfare, where damage is done invisibly, without immediate physical destruction, but with devastating consequences for civilian populations. Another focal area within the plan is the expansion of Israel's Iron Dome and David Sling missile defense systems, with an eye on neutralizing a broader range of ballistic threats. This aspect implies not just defense, but a long-term anticipation of sustained military threats. Investments in next-generation fighter jets, stealth drones, and AI-assisted targeting systems reveal that the scope of planning is not just defensive, but offensively future-facing, intended to ensure superiority in both conventional and unconventional battles. What makes this particularly significant is the level of detail and foresight put into urban combat scenarios, cross-border raids, and maritime blockades. These aren't contingency drafts. They're step-by-step outlines, accompanied by logistics chains and multi-agency coordination mechanisms. It also reflects how warfare is no longer bound by geography. It is being programmed, simulated, and rehearsed in virtual space before it ever touches the ground. This is warfare by design, not reaction. And it signals that the balance of peace in the region may be more fragile than the world assumed. In the aftermath of the leaked Israeli war strategy, intelligence agencies across Europe have gone into heightened alert. The scope and specificity of the plan are not seen as abstract or theoretical. It is perceived as an actionable framework that could trigger significant geopolitical consequences. European intelligence services, particularly in France, Germany and the United Kingdom have reportedly begun recalibrating their surveillance networks, increasing diplomatic communications, and analyzing potential threat vectors. This includes reassessing their own regional military deployments, cyber defense postures, and intelligence sharing protocols with both NATO and non-NATO partners. The documents, which outline potential preemptive strikes on Iran and possible fallout across Lebanon, Syria, and even the Red Sea corridor, are being treated as more than just a leak. They're being studied as a possible early warning of major upheaval. But what particularly troubles European analysts is the potential domino effect of Israeli action, which could ignite a broader Middle Eastern conflict that might entangle global powers. With U.S. backing hinted throughout the documents, and Iran's regional proxies likely to respond in retaliation, European nations fear being caught in the political and economic aftershocks. European capitals are especially sensitive to anything that threatens global oil routes or causes instability in migration patterns, as both would impact domestic political stability and economic resilience. The intelligence community is also paying close attention to Russian and Chinese responses, as both countries maintain strong ties with Iran and could use the instability to exert more influence over the region, thereby diminishing Western leverage. Moreover, intelligence agencies are now monitoring an uptick in encrypted communications and satellite movements around known hotspots: Lebanon, Iraq, and parts of the Eastern Mediterranean. This suggests that the leak may have accelerated or disrupted pre-existing covert operations. There are growing fears that even if Israel delays the plan due to public scrutiny, some of the military buildup and deployment stages are already in motion. European leaders are being briefed on worst-case scenarios, including terrorist reprisals on European soil, sabotage of energy pipelines, and refugee flows reminiscent of the Syrian civil war. Within this context, the leak isn't simply a national security concern for Israel. It's being treated as a global variable that could upend diplomatic balances and security frameworks that took decades to build. One of the most explosive revelations from the leaked Israel war plan is its explicit focus on Iran as the primary target of potential preemptive military action. The document outlines detailed strategies aimed at neutralizing Iran's nuclear infrastructure, disrupting missile development programs, and crippling key military facilities across multiple provinces. These aren't generalized defense strategies, they are precise and structured operational blueprints. Analysts examining the leak have noted that the targets include nuclear enrichment sites like Natanz and Fordow, along with air bases believed to host Iran's advanced drones and ballistic missile stockpiles. The inclusion of cyber components aimed at disabling Iran's air defense networks and communication systems further indicates a comprehensive approach to incapacitation, not deterrent. What makes this especially significant is the broader context of Israeli-Iranian tensions. Israel has long viewed Iran's nuclear ambitions as an existential threat. However, the leaked material suggests a shift from covert sabotage and targeted assassinations toward full-scale preemptive engagement. The plan even includes scenarios for retaliatory responses from Iran's regional allies, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, or Shia militias operating in Iraq and Syria. This indicates that Israeli military planners are not only preparing for initial strikes, but for a prolonged and multi-front conflict. The possibility of such a confrontation escalating into a regional war involving multiple nations is not theoretical. It is mapped, simulated, and timed. European observers are particularly troubled by the potential implications of such a strike. Unlike previous isolated incidents, this would represent a deliberate attempt to dismantle a sovereign nation's military infrastructure before any open hostilities have occurred. It's a doctrine of forward disruption based on perceived future threats rather than immediate aggression. This raises serious questions under international law and threatens to undermine the diplomatic framework painstakingly built around the Iran nuclear deal, which many European nations still support. The leaked material also hints at a timeline suggesting that Israel is waiting for either a regional provocation or a window of political cover, such as shifting U.S. policy or increased attacks on its borders. If that moment comes, the plan is ready to be activated. This revelation forces the international community to confront a dangerous reality: that the Middle East may be far closer to large-scale military confrontation than global discourse has acknowledged. The leaked war plan reveals not only Israel's tactical vision, but also underscores the deep interdependence between Israeli and U.S. military operations. The documents detail extensive coordination with American defense institutions, suggesting that significant portions of the $10 billion zero-cents budget rely on U.S. military aid, intelligence assets, and logistical support. Joint exercises, weapons procurement, satellite imaging, and drone technology transfers are embedded throughout the strategy, showing how the alliance is more than just diplomatic. It is operational, deeply integrated, and synchronized in execution. This has sparked a wave of concern among European policymakers who see the potential for U.S. entanglement as a force multiplier in regional escalation. Europe has traditionally tried to balance its role between supporting Israel's right to security and upholding the principles of international diplomacy. However, if Israel initiates preemptive military actions with clear American logistical and financial backing, it could fracture this delicate balance. The documents point towards shared command structures and potential use of U.S. military assets in Israeli-controlled operations. These revelations could inflame tensions between the U.S. and European allies who still support a negotiated solution with Iran. In practical terms, if a unilateral Israeli operation is interpreted globally as a joint effort with the United States, Europe may be pressured by alliance obligations or public perception to either support or condemn the actions, narrowing its diplomatic room to maneuver. Another layer of concern revolves around U.S. domestic politics and how it may influence Israeli military timing. Several European analysts believe that Israel may be anticipating a shift in American leadership or foreign policy tone and sees a shrinking window for acting with impunity. This could encourage a more aggressive posture while the current U.S. administration remains supportive. The leaked plan even references timelines aligned with expected U.S. political transitions, suggesting a strategic link between Washington's internal dynamics and Tel Aviv's external military calculus. There is also unease about the precedent such coordination sets for future military actions. If one nation, with another's backing, can preemptively strike sovereign targets under the justification of strategic threat, it could weaken global norms on warfare, deterrence, and proportionality. European defense circles are grappling with the implications this has for global stability and whether they must now prepare for ripple effects that could draw them into a conflict neither initiated nor supported. Among the most disturbing details in the leaked $10 billion zero-cents war blueprint is Israel's intent to integrate artificial intelligence and predictive surveillance systems into the core of its military operations. This marks a fundamental evolution in how wars are designed and waged. The documents show a deliberate shift toward algorithm-driven decision-making, where AI systems are not only assisting in targeting, but also identifying threats, predicting enemy movements, and potentially initiating defensive responses without human intervention. Such automation transforms the battlefield into a digital chessboard where data becomes as powerful as firepower. European experts reviewing the leak have expressed deep concern about the ethical and legal implications of this militarized AI strategy. The deployment of autonomous systems capable of lethal force raises questions about accountability, control, and the erosion of human oversight. Once machines begin selecting targets based on probability models or behavioral damage, the risk of collateral damage, false positives, and unintended escalation rises exponentially. The leaked material references the development of surveillance grids, capable of scanning and analyzing movement patterns across urban and rural terrain, effectively creating a real-time, AI-enhanced map of perceived threats. This could lead to a future where individuals are labeled hostile based on predictive models, not proven intent. Europe has historically advocated for strict regulation on AI in military applications. The use of autonomous drones, facial recognition in war zones, and AI-assisted missile targeting challenges long-held principles under the Geneva Conventions. The leak forces a confrontation with a reality that is already unfolding faster than diplomacy can react to. Some sections even hint at exporting this AI model to allied forces, raising fears that these systems might proliferate globally before international laws catch up. There is also a growing worry that these technologies blur the line between combatant and civilian. AI doesn't feel remorse, doesn't understand nuance, and doesn't account for the gray zones of human behavior. By trusting software with life and death decisions, militaries risk normalizing a form of warfare that removes moral judgment from the equation. This not only threatens human rights, but also risks setting a precedent that rivals and adversaries may follow, triggering a global arms race in autonomous warfare. European governments now face a crucial moment, whether to challenge this direction or silently watch as technology begins to outpace the moral frameworks meant to govern its use. The leaked $10 billion zero-cents war strategy reveals a dangerous trajectory that reaches far beyond the borders of Israel and its immediate neighbors. The potential implementation of this plan doesn't just threaten a regional skirmish. It risks setting off a chain reaction that could spiral into a global crisis. With preemptive strikes on Iran's strategic assets as a central pillar of the plan, the likelihood of retaliation from Iranian-backed groups across Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and even Yemen becomes almost certain. Each of these actors has a history of asymmetrical warfare, and their collective response could lead to a multi-front conflict stretching across the Middle East. In this highly interconnected world, that kind of volatility doesn't stay contained. For Europe, the fallout could be immediate and severe. A destabilized Middle East often triggers large-scale refugee movements, and the memory of the Syrian refugee crisis remains fresh in the minds of European citizens and leaders. The sudden surge of displaced people, combined with the strain on border security and social services, would test the cohesion of the European Union. Beyond humanitarian consequences, the economic implications are equally alarming. Global oil prices, already susceptible to minor disruptions, would spike dramatically if conflict erupts in the Persian Gulf or Red Sea. This would impact European supply chains, inflation rates, and energy policies at a time when most countries are already navigating economic uncertainty. Another factor drawing Europe into the potential crisis is its web of military alliances. Any Israeli strike involving U.S. support could trigger indirect involvement of NATO countries, especially if Iranian retaliation includes attacks on Western assets or personnel in the region. That would drag European forces into a conflict they did not initiate and perhaps do not support. This scenario risks repeating the dynamics of earlier Middle East conflicts, where intervention led to unintended consequences and long-term instability. Fear among analysts is not just of a hot war, but of a cascading collapse of diplomatic structures. Years of fragile negotiations like the JCPOA and other non-proliferation agreements could unravel within days of a military strike. In their place, nations would retreat into hardened postures, rebuilding walls of mistrust and suspicion. If Israel proceeds without international backing and the world reacts too slowly, this moment could mark a historical pivot toward an era defined less by rules and more by raw power. What we've uncovered through this $10 billion 0 cents leak isn't just a war plan. It's a mirror reflecting the fragile state of global diplomacy, the accelerating pace of military technology, and the quiet drift toward a future shaped by force rather than dialogue. From preemptive strikes and AI-powered surveillance to deep U.S. coordination and a looming specter of global conflict, this plan holds implications that no nation can afford to ignore, especially not Europe. It's a wake-up call for policymakers, citizens, and every person who still believes in the power of peace over provocation. In a world already teetering on the edge, silence is no longer an option. The question is no longer whether we can afford to speak up. It's whether we can afford not to. Thank you for staying with me through this vital conversation. Your time, your awareness, and your voice matter more now than ever. May you carry these truths forward with courage and clarity, and never underestimate the power of informed minds in shaping a more just and peaceful world. Stay conscious, stay brave, and good luck.